Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another casual stroll through Lord of the Rings Online. My name is Matt Elliott. I go by Scenario on the message boards, and today we have a very special tour to give to you, a first look, a preview of, again, one of our, best slash worst kept secrets in the game, something that's coming out with Update 37. Before I get started on that, though, I do want to just let everyone know a little bit about the stream. This is a world design focused stream where I intend to talk about what goes into building the world, the landscape, the research we do, in case of today's stream, the work that we do to build a housing neighborhood. I'm not going to be able to answer questions regarding things like PvMP, lag, game systems, stuff that's going on with things like the stat squish or the class updates. I am not a designer focused on those things. My focus is on world and level design. So I'm happy to answer those questions, but I'm going to stay away from other questions that are outside of my purview. I do recommend, if you do have those kinds of questions, you reach out on the message boards to ask them, or you hang out in our regular Court of the Ring streams, or any other special streams that might be happening that are focused specifically on those features. I think there is a stream coming up on Friday in Court of the Rings where I think Orion, Alan Mackey, will be there to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming stuff that he's been working on. So without further ado, welcome everyone. This may be a familiar place to some of you all. This was the broker's office here in Breetown. So much like all of our housing neighborhoods, this will be kind of the jumping on point for a lot of people for housing if you so wish to go here. You can also explore through Lyndelby itself to get to the neighborhood. But this is by and large where convenience really comes into play. So as we approach in here, you will get to meet Ameltha Ditchell, who is the Lyndelby housing broker. She's going to be the one that's going to help you figure out which houses you want to buy and where you want to buy them. And she's also got the convenient ledger where you can basically go to any neighborhood that you want. In the case of this, for this stream in particular, I basically bought out a whole neighborhood for myself because, I had that extra, the extra mithril coin kicking around, so I figured why not just buy all of them. The neighborhood, and let me go to the first house just so that I can. Oh no, that's right. The ledger lets me teleport to the neighborhood. Don't mind me. There we go. So a long, long time ago, we built Lyndelby, which was a hidden hobbit village in the Vales of Anduin, or in the Wells of Langflood, I should say, which was a part of the Vales of Anduin, right here. It's not supposed to. It's hidden like so many of our other things that are hidden in the game. You're not supposed to know it's there, but you know it's there. Very much like Estelden. And when we built it, there was a very curious gate heading to the south that could not be gotten past. And from the original inception of Lyndelby itself, we always kind of figured that this valley up here would be something that we turn into our premium hobbit neighborhood. I think one of the things that's really important to us as we continue to introduce new neighborhoods is that we offer a variety of quintessential experiences as you're going through and picking where you want to live. We have our original neighborhoods, our premium neighborhoods, all of them are intended to feature a certain kind of experience, a certain kind of fantasy that you could live in. The original ones kind of hit home on the, focused on the individual races, and then as we've grown them, we've pushed towards variety of homes and neighborhoods for all of the races that we have currently. We have the race of men has Bree housing, and they have the Rohan neighborhoods. Dwarves have Thorin's Hall, and now Erebor. Hobbits have Mickle Delving, and now they have Lyndelby. Races such as the Elves and Bjornings haven't really hit them yet, but I think at some point in the future we definitely want to. So here we are. Let me change the time of day real quick, because make it a little bit brighter and cheerier up here. Go through some comments real quick to see what people have to say before I start exploring through here. A couple of people talking about how the broker's office is one of the handiest spaces in Bree. Certainly wanted to make it convenient for everyone once they hit level 20 to be able to buy a house of their own. Some of the housing is accessible on your own just by running there at lower levels. But once we started introducing premium housing, we didn't really want to be bound to being in locations that only level 20s could get to. So things like the broker's office really help us get players to those locations without needing them to get there on their own. So let's see, a couple comments in here. Zowie1699 asks, will we be able to buy housing from her with writs, or will she only take mithrils? So all premium housing can be bought either with writs or with mithril. You can't mix or match, so it has to be all in one or the other to buy it, but you get both of those options when you go to purchase. If you see me playing around with things, or when this does become available on Bull Roar, which it is not currently because we wanted to focus on stat squish and class updates, when it becomes available on Bull Roar, you'll be able to go to the tavern there to get allotments so that you can play around with the system without needing to worry about actually having the currency handy. So yeah, you can buy it with either or, but not a combination of both. Softsnake GR says, Lyndelby is still one of the laggiest places in LOTRO that drop down FPS badly. Is there any plan to fix that anytime soon? Certainly something we can investigate. I haven't seen a bug come across my plate on that recently. I know when we were first building Mist Hallow, there was a problem there, problems in Mist Hallow in general, and I think we worked to resolve some of those. But if it's still an issue, I highly recommend filing a bug on it so that we can make sure that it gets into our queues. I'm not going to be answering questions about jars. Pomeleo says, or Pomele, sorry if I butchered that. Would love to see elves get premium housing next in the future. Certainly, I think, through process of elimination, who we would produce next. And let's see. Can we get elvish housing that is less orange, perhaps? Only quibbles I have with elf housing. So Azalea asks, the new hook changes, are they all for housing or only for Lyndelby? It will be for all hooks, but we could discuss those changes as we progress into the space a little bit more. So I'm going to take a pause on answering questions, and let's just explore. So I am actually going to casually be strolling through here because I do not need to cover miles upon kilometers upon kilometers of space like I do in my normal run-throughs. But so very upfront, you get to the first house, Floodside Road, home of Scenario, or your home if you buy it. So all homes in the neighborhood have an expansive yard like this. They also have a stable up front from which you can hook your mounts. There are also a few other hitching posts scattered throughout the property as well. You can see one here over by the fence. So one of the big changes that we are introducing with this update is the introduction of some hook consolidation and giving access to for decorations to go onto other hook types. So the biggest hook consolidation is floor hooks have been merged with furniture hooks. So floor and furniture are now one and the same. And on top of that, yard and furniture decorations can now work on either. So furniture items can work on yard hooks, the base yard hooks, and then base yard items can work on furniture hooks. This doesn't apply to things like huge and enormous yard hooks, because those are really, really big items, and we still want to maintain some amount of control about how many of those can be placed in an area. But those are the big changes that are happening to hooks. We aren't consolidating them per se. So, for example, I could see in the future yard and furniture hooks becoming just decoration hooks. But that would require me going through and editing every single housing item in the game, in addition to editing every single hook in the game, or almost every single hook in the game. And I'm anxious about doing that, and I want to handle one thing at a time. So the user experience is going to be a little weird because you'll see, things can be used furniture and yard, but when you mouse over something that is, not, something that's a little bit older, these are all new items that I have here. So they're going to already have kind of the updated naming conventions that I want on them. But older items are going to have those older names. And so they're not going to be updated. So it might be a little weird figuring out what can be used on what, but all you need to do is just use your hook, and your hook will tell you what can be used. So let's see. And we'll take a look at the vendor when we get there, but one of the big focuses for new deco items that are coming out with this update is markets. So there's a lot of great market assets, things like, the hanging fish here, the sack of potatoes. You could even have your own stalls. So the idea was, and we're also introducing a suite of shop signs. So the idea being that you could turn your home into a market if you wanted to. You could make it roleplay as a market. This seemed like it made sense too for the Hobbitland as well, especially looking at Lyndelby and how rife of farming and market assets it already is. So this felt like a good thing to go with. Don't mind my ladder that's just kind of hanging out there. So yeah, there's lots and lots of items and whatnot that you can use to turn your humble home, whether it's here in Lyndelby or wherever else you own a house, into something that feels more like a marketplace. So I did not. I only grabbed a small assortment of items for this update, but there are about 150 deco items that are being introduced. The lion's share of them are on the vendor here, the furniture here in Lyndelby, but a number of them are also sprinkled throughout appropriate regional vendors as well. So here we are. So this neighborhood features 4 base houses, 6 deluxe houses, 1 stately base house, 1 stately deluxe house, and a kinship house. So there's a lot of variety here. All of the deluxe houses have at least 1 free moving enormous yard hook, I believe. Yeah, mobile enormous. Yeah. So this one here. So at least all of the deluxe ones have 1 mobile yard hook. The stately houses, which we'll get to shortly, are all mobile yards. So there is no restriction on vertical movement on any of those. And you'll see why we kind of got away with that a little bit, because those houses are kind of sequestered off. So these single hooks here, these are us just testing the waters and seeing what we can do and seeing how it works out. We want to be a little safe with those. But the deluxe houses, because they are off in their own valleys and kind of hidden away, we figure it's a little bit safer to let them have free range, much like you have in the houses in Erebor. King's pony. Maybe I should get on a mount. Let me see. Where's my collections panel? Collections and mounts. Do I have any? Well, there we go. I got my goat. That'll help. So we're going to make our way to the first, this is the Stately Deluxe Smeal. So we're going to make our way there and spend a little bit more quality time with it to kind of show you what to expect. Now, both stately houses have different floor plans from their normal counterparts. It's a little bit different, kind of similar to the geode house in Erebor, where there's a little bit of a difference to it to make it kind of attractive and appealing. Both of these houses have a great view of the valley, so you can take a look at Lyndelby from here. Some players may have, some intrepid adventurers may have found their way into little nubbins of corners here and there to reveal that they've made it into the homesteads, and that's been there for a while. In fact, most of the neighborhood has been built since like December, January. So let's head inside real quick so you can see what the insides of these homes look like real quick. And while this is loading up, I'll take a quick gander at any questions that might have come up while I've been scrolling through here. Let's see. Where are we? Alright, so lots of people excited about things, about the new consolidations. So Lotro Housing Dude asks, can you please remove all the short walls around the yard hooks in Rohan? I'm not sure exactly what that means. Usually we have the stone walls in place as a means for indicating the bounds of the property. Softsnake says, nice job on hiding this new homestead in the mountains and not make the mistake you did with Rohan Kingstead. Agree to disagree that it was a mistake. Edith Aldora says, I'd like to be able to scale cosmetic housing items. Some of the items from Midsummer, for example, are a little overwhelming in a house with short ceilings. A Thorin's Hall housing. Scaling isn't something that we can do actively. It's something that I've made a request for, and maybe at some time we'll be able to get that. But in the short term, if there are certain housing items that feel like they're a little bit too big or a little bit too small, there may be an opportunity to make new versions of them that are bigger or smaller. We're never going to really edit the size of an existing item because, while it may not work for your house, other people either may like how it looks in that kind of space or maybe using it in their own property, and changing the size of things out from under people isn't great. Isn't a great experience. Let's see. Can we use wall hooks outdoors? So unfortunately, wall hooks are still remaining an interior thing. The reason why wall items have not been consolidated with furniture yet is because typically the origin point of a wall item is different than what a floor item might be. And that's why they haven't been combined yet, and that's also why probably wall stuff will not be available outside, just because you could hook something on something that's a wall item on a yard hook, for example, and its origin point would be different, so it'd be sunk into the ground, and then you'd be unable to raise it because traditional yard hooks don't have a vertical movement, that sort of thing. Let's see, will the property guard be both indoor and outdoor? So I think they should work both indoors and outdoors. If they aren't working indoors or if they aren't working in either, then that's usually a bug that needs to be addressed. So welcome to the interior of a Lyndelby house. So these assets were built way back when we first did, when we did the Yondershire. One of the goals that I had when the Ondershire was produced was I wanted to make sure that whatever assets we were making for Hobbit interiors there were things that could then subsequently be repurposed for use in a housing neighborhood. It just makes sense to kind of work in that way. And similarly, the stuff that was done in Rivendell, for example, gives us the parts and pieces from the Last Homely House, gives us the parts and pieces and shapes that we need. Maybe not necessarily the textures, but the shapes that we need in order to take those and build an elf neighborhood as well. So in a base deluxe, in a normal deluxe home, basically this is where the house ends. There are these little side rooms here, but for the deluxe home, you get to come into a little bit of a cave with water. I'm not sure if you can fish in it. I would have to do some research to see if it's fishable, but otherwise, you get yourself basically a swimming pool in your own home. One of the cool things too is you get access to one of the new features inside that you normally wouldn't get inside. This is the new fence hook. So this has been one of the brand new feature for Lyndelby housing and in perpetuity all housing going forward. It hasn't been retrofitted yet. I was intending to try to do that, but some of the fences that were used in other neighborhoods were not of the right scale. And so I had to table that until I had more time to devote to go in and retrofit. So we'll take a look at hooks or the fence hooks when we go back outside. I'm going to answer a couple more questions because boy, do you all have a lot of questions today. So we'll take a look over here at the water while I take a look at the questions. Arabani says, is there any chance you'll get rid of the hook system completely and make it free placement? Probably not. Not unless we have a significant overhaul of how the housing system works. Right now, we're pretty much bound to the hook system. I'm doing what I can to give you all the flexibility that you need, at least in new housing offerings, to have it almost feel like there are no hooks. Basically the hooks just act as your starting point, and then you can move everything around from there. So let's work our way back outside. So you'll note here too, while I have the names of floor hooks have not been updated, I'm debating whether or not I actually want to do that. But the names haven't been updated, but floor hooks now are furniture instead of their own separate floor category. And all floor items are now part of the furniture category. Another thing to add too, and we can show this when we get outside. Well, I'm not sure how well I'll be able to show this, but there have been updates to doormats as well, so you can get some left and right and back and forth placement movement with them compared to how they used to be before. So that if the thing that you're putting on your doormat, you want to move it out from the door a little bit or put it to the side, you'll be able to do that just a little bit. So Carrioza CZ says, it's quite interesting that you put Hobbit housing in Lyndelby. I always thought you will pack it with the South Farthing someday. And that's not to say that we won't have housing in the South Farthing either. It's just, there's a difference between building something kind of in a space that we know we're familiar with, know the character of, and something like the South Farthing, which has zero built about it. I think in the past, we've done a poor job of future thinking and have sometimes built things in spaces that at the time we built it, we're like, oh, well, we'll never build here. And then we do. And that kind of hamstrings us and shoots us in the foot. So I think if we were to ever do Hobbit housing in South Farthing or somewhere else in the undeveloped areas of the Shire, we would wait until we develop those spaces first so that we can make sure that there's room for them. Aaron Bard says, "Market, there's so much rejoicing in the Shire." That was the hope. Nanara says, "Is this a housing update to rule them all?" It might be. This certainly is like one of the big tent poles for the update. So here we are. We are now outside of the Hobbit hole, and the nice thing about a lot of the hooks is as soon as you open them, the panel will stay up in perpetuity. So one of the new features, or the new feature for housing in this update, is decorative fences. We wanted to make sure that there was kind of a new feature, a new hook to get excited about for this space. And decorative fences was kind of what we came up with. Unfortunately, with the fences, I don't have a way to update the physics, so it's all purely cosmetic. But you can still have a variety of cool-looking fences, many of which you can buy off of the vendor here in Lyndelby, others that you'll be able to find in their appropriate places. So, for example, I think the charred Orcish Palisade, for example, is something you can get off of a vendor in Estelden. And if you want privacy, you got it. You can just put up these walls. But there's a variety of different fence types that you can pick from. Let me get to a little bit of a different spot so you can really appreciate the difference of the fences. I tried to make sure that most of the fence types that you can find in the world have representation here. There might be a few that I missed. Some that, if you ever wanted your high hay fence, you got your high hay fence right now. But most of the fence types, the palisade types that you can find throughout the game world, you'll be able to find here in-game as items that you can use to decorate your home in Lyndelby. Future neighborhoods will certainly have this feature built into it, and existing ones are probably going to take a little bit of work. You'll notice here too that there is a property bounds Rohan, and then there is just a plain property bounds. This is the default one, so don't be surprised if it doesn't change things. This is built with the intention of like other areas might use different fence types as their base, and you might want it to look like something different. But yeah, there is a wide range of fences to pick from. Familiar faces, for those of you that have been playing the game for a while, you'll know and remember some of these. Hey. Good old Shire fence, twig fence. So yeah, you have a lot of options. I think I'm going to go with the hey for this house. One thing to note too, you may see some of the landscape pink out a little bit. It may get a little pink. That's a byproduct of some changes that we were making to how our terrain system works. So don't be too shocked. That is going to change, and the pink will go away before this goes live. Aaron Bard says, could you please speak a little more on mobility of hooks? I've been struggling with items not being able to move much and shunting back to the home square after I leave. So right now, if you're putting stuff on the landscape, on your landscape hooks, most normal landscape housing has yard hooks. And those yard hooks have a certain set of rules to them that were built in such a way to help, one, make sure that the hooks stay within the property that they are bound to, but also make sure that they were obeying the laws of physics, basically. So normal yard hooks, when you put an item in it, it can only ever move closer to the center of the property where we have the code object that we call the housekeeper. So normal yard hooks can only ever move closer. With Erebor, we had this problem where that system only cared about the terrain mesh. It didn't care about any physics that the yard might be on. So physical objects, platforms, that sort of thing. So when you hooked something, it would just snap to the terrain below it, not snap to whatever physics object there was. So with Erebor, we introduced the mobile yard hooks, which have forward, back, left, right, up, down, z-axis movement. So that allowed us to actually make sure Erebor worked. Those don't have their placement restriction, instead of being restricted based off of where the home point of the house is, are restricted based off of a radius from where the hook itself was placed. Up until Lyndelby, that kind of hook was only available in Erebor. In Lyndelby, we're experimenting a little bit more with it. The stately houses are fully mobile yard. Those houses are fully, you can put a hook on there, we put an item in the hook and freely move them around within the bounds of that hook. And then in Lyndelby, the deluxe houses and the kinship house have one, I think the kinship house maybe has 2 or 3 mobile yard hooks, so that you can play around with a little bit more freedom in those spaces. So we're playing around with it. We're cautious. We don't want to we don't want things to get out of hand, basically. So we're kind of testing the waters with things as we go. Softsnake asks, have you, SSG team, considered making the housing system be upgradable, like buy a standard house for 100 silver, then for $5 upgrade standard house to deluxe house, then upgrade again? Not in that specific way. I think our upgrade direction will likely be more towards like expansion packs that you can purchase on a house as opposed to upgrade, like a one-time purchase kind of thing. But again, that is not something that we have specifically handy and ready to implement. I have prototypes available for that sort of thing, but it still needs more work in order to really feel like it's doing what it should. Oh, as I run into things. So here is the base, the stately base Smeal, and you get your view. Arguably, you get a better view of the valley, even though you don't get you don't get any view of Lyndelby itself like you do in the other. You do get a view of the valley, which is a great view. And all the features are the same. Fewer hooks, but the inside is where the difference lies. Oh, I forgot to have people remind me to have a drink. So Carrioza asks, is there a plan to be able to change the texture of the house someday, like the exterior? I would love to do that. There are limitations on us doing that in a traditional neighborhood sense. But if you take a look at what I've done with the estate, which is technically a single house neighborhood, that may be where we have an opportunity and a flexibility to do that sort of thing if we ever introduce that kind of system. So now we're in the base house, by the way. And I believe this wall here in a normal base house is closed off. For the stately, you have a ramp that takes you down into your stately basement. And that stately basement has something ominous going on in the distance here. So both of the stately houses also have a fence hook in it that you can use to wall up the areas, just in case. It's still not the height of the physics won't change, but at least visually you can change any sort of fence in here that you might like. If you don't want to see the goblins and pretend that you're protected, you throw up a big wall. If you want them to be neighbors, maybe you have a little bit of a lower wall instead. It's your choice. Kurowin asks, are we able to dye the red trim? No, you're not. The trim colors, the door frames, these beams in the ceiling, and these supports are not dyeable. Those are the base color, and that's what they stay. All of these wall surfaces here, the floor, wherever you see this floor and this wall, that's what's changeable in this space as far as the texture and the color. Right. We'll make our way out, and we'll head up onto the kinship house. I'll wander my way there slowly and ask questions. Today's drink of choice is water. Eros216 asks, because of its unique architecture, I've always thought forest shell housing would be interesting. Any thoughts? I think we have a very large number of different cultures and different styles of architecture in Lord of the Rings that would make for interesting housing. I think the tricky thing is some of them lend themselves better to building housing interiors, building housing neighborhoods, adding in the customization than others. So things like forest shell structures and like Dunlending structures, for example, those would need a lot of asset work in order to make them viable for housing. Whereas, things like hobbit homes, human homes, dwarf homes, like we have a library of assets that already leans into a more modular building concept, and I think that's why the more, I don't know that eccentric is the right word, but the more like out there housing designs, things like yurts and whatnot, have not been a direction we've gone, is because we would need a lot more assets and a lot more brand new assets to pull it off. Let's see. I'm gonna head up to the market real quick, and then we'll make our way all the way up to the kinship house. But there are homes scattered throughout here. You've been able to see the map that has found its way onto the live servers already. So you have a preview of what this space is going to look like. It butts right up against Sundergrot. There's an intro quest for this space similar to our other neighborhoods that lets you tour around. And some of it, one of the things that, at least in my head in the story, is like the hobbits, the Hobbitlin, intentionally kind of settled in this valley because before it fell, the dwarves were kind of like protecting this space for their own, and were just kind of like okay with the Hobbitlin being here. And then after it fell, like this place is kind of a ghost story. Those upper reaches are like bad things happen there. Let's see. Ziriana says, thank you for all the hard work. I've tried so many MMOs and this one has me hooked. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Scrunky says, what kind of ambient lighting will be available? The same ambient lighting that is available everywhere for houses that have ambient lighting. We did update some of the furnishers. So that you can find more things. So we've got, you go to, here we go. No, where's the furnisher? I thought I had placed a furnisher. I may not have. Order items, that's just for that. Perhaps here? Reuse your supplier. Vault keeper. Well, if we do not have a furnisher placed here yet, I thought Ameltha was supposed to have an inventory, but if she does not, she does not. Oh, here we go. Housing, furniture, ambience furniture. So for simple things like housing, for lighting and whatnot, you won't have to go to a specific neighborhood for. So ambience furniture will have all the same light sources and whatnot that you could get from the one in Rohan. I think Erebor has been updated with this as well, so you have all of these different options for lighting and for ambient effects and for day files and whatnot. Some of those are in here as well. So, for example, the Rohan day files are part of the ambiance furniture for this. And then the housing furniture has, has other day files in it as well. So yeah, this is a fully supported Quest Hub, or not Quest Hub, Social Hub, with all the different town services and whatnot that you would need in it. Whether you want to cook, you want to farm, you want to smelt. There's an auction house and a banker here as well. Mailbox, so you are all set for all of your services needs while you're here. Let's work our way up. Up, up, up. Nanarna says, would be nice if we could at least get windows to be furniture items, given it would allow for more versatility in building facades. So windows are something that could be doable. The tricky thing with that is I wouldn't want to remove windows from existing spaces, and in fact I think even some windows are baked into the walls of the structures themselves. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to remove windows, but making window items that are decoration items, that's not a bad idea, and that's something that we could probably achieve, given time. I don't want to oversaturate with too many deco items too fast. I love this little rocky pass into this house. I thought this was cool. This feels good, and it has a couple of waterfalls. It's got one waterfall on that side, and I think, just one. All right, yeah, just one. We'll speed up a little bit more. So this is that's too fast. There we go. That's a little bit better. A little bit less casual, but not as uncasual as I usually am. Calcinda says, both the Hobbit premiums and the future Elven premiums are the ones I've been most excited about, and I agree with the other dude. Get rid of the orange in the Elven homes. Elven homes should look dreamy. Orange is not dreamy. Again, to each their own. Some people might like their house looking a little sherbet. You never know. So to reiterate, based off of Elbereth Elizabeth's question, premium housing can be bought with either writs or mithril coins, one or the other. You can't mix or match. So it needs to be all either mithril coin or all housing writs. So here we are at the kinship space. So the kinships get this beautiful yard. They have multiple fence hooks. So I think there's 3 different options for fence. You have your main fence, your front fence, your middle fence, and your hill fence. Several different openings, entrances. I think there's 4 entrances total into it. As you proceed towards the back, you've got your little water wheel here, and then all the way back up here, and you can see the number of hooks that we have in here. All the way back up in here, you've got a fun little pond to hang out by, if you so desire. But this is a considerable space. This is a large amount of landscape for any kinship to populate and to fill up with. And with the new hook features, the new flexibility that we've added for yard and furniture stuff, you have a lot more options as far as decoration goes. Let's see. So Lotro Housing Dues says, okay, I would like to point out And let me get up here before I read the question so you can get the kinship view of the neighborhood. I would like to point out that it seems that some of these homes have the same major drawback that the current Hobbit homes have, in that they are single story for the most part, which makes it hard to drag hooks around the house due to the distance from room to room. Every other home in game has rooms above and below, rooms allowing for movement. So the reason why Hobbit Smeals, these Smeals, are not multi-floored is just because from the development perspective, both in the assets that we have and what we've done before with other Hobbit homes, Hobbits never really felt like they were a like layered pancake layer on top of each other kind of house. You know, they burrow in, and it felt better to have those interiors be broader than deeper, if that makes sense. So hopefully, Winstonia, your question about the fence hook has been answered by being able to see what I've done here playing with the hooks. The fence hook is a cosmetic appearance change on the fencing for your home. So we've got the little fence here, and this changes all of the fences in your property as opposed to going one by one. So this joins the ambient environment and exterior music hooks that have been added recently as well. Do that. And then we'll go upstairs. We'll put the fence down upstairs, and then, where are you, fence hook? I might have to find that. I'm not sure exactly where it is. Alright, I'll have to double check that. This may not have been set up yet, but yeah, it's another cool cosmetic feature, something that kind of gives you a little bit more of a customization option for your home. So Druid's Fire says they haven't discussed prices, folks. You might need to wait for it to be on board to at least get placeholder prices to consider, but even those won't be finalized until it goes live. That is correct. None of our pricing currently is our final pricing. That final pricing will... Sorry, I had a hangnail pull on me. That final pricing will happen probably as we get closer. So I wouldn't even expect the... I wouldn't expect the prices you see on Bullroar itself to be the final prices for Bullroar. But we try to get close to the ballpark, and then we'll finagle it from there. Lore says, this neighborhood is going to make me buy another premium house, huh? I've resisted Erebor, but spent way too much money on my Rohan and Belfalos houses. Well, I'm happy to hear that this is making you want to spend money on us. So welcome to the Kinship's Meal. Now, this one, you know, contrary to what I was saying before, the Kinship's Meal does have a little bit of an over-under to it. It is not super extensive, but it felt like that was really needed for something the size of this space. Unlike the deluxe spaces, though, it does not have the stately spaces. It does not have a like special decorative room to it. Really, the special sauce for this space is focused very heavily and specifically on the exterior. Pomolela, again, I'm sorry if I butcher that. How many hooks are we looking at for Lyndelby premiums? A lot. I don't have the numbers specifically off the top of my head, but there are a considerable number of them. We can actually probably go down to the broker. I think those have been updated with the correct information. Let's see if there are any other questions. Can we see the item slots for kinship yard and interior, since we can't buy one on Bull to see ourselves unless you've already done it, of course. So Bull housing is not available right now. I would encourage patience because there are a couple of other bigger things system-wise that are happening for update 37 that we really, really need and want more attention on. Housing is not something that, like, is not something that needs a lot of hammering on in comparison to things like the stat squish and to the class updates. So that's why Bull is not going to be hosting Lyndelby at launch, or at Bull 1, or even probably Bull 2 won't have it. We're thinking like the third Bull preview will be what really has the meat and potatoes. So let's see. So deluxe meals offer 135 interior, 53 exterior, hitching post, lighting environment, music, wall surface, floor surface, and fence hooks with shared storage. So that's the deluxe. Base offers 99 interior, 38 exterior. Yeah, so that gives you the ballpark of what to expect as far as the number of hooks that you can get in that space. Mara Lorna asks, when are these going to be available? Saving up for one. These will become available as part of Updates 37's launch. I don't have a specific date that I can give you for that yet. We're aiming for sometime in August, I believe. So that is when we anticipate it going live, sometime during that month. Things can change, so I am not going to quote a specific date, but that should give you a sense of where we're at with these things. And let me go up to that stunning view from the kinship house, and then we'll answer some more questions. We only got a few minutes left, so I'm happy to just dive right into questions. I'm sure you have a lot. But yeah, this was a really, really fun space to build. After coming off the heels of building Swanfleet and Cardelon, it was nice to work on something that was like a little bit smaller, smaller-ish, and something that was a little bit, I need to fix these too. Something that was smaller, something a little bit more intimate, and something that I could like build a little bit more in fine detail, actually, which was kind of nice. All right, so we'll have this awesome view. Let's see, let me gain time. 7, 6. That's about where we are. How about? There we go. Get a little sunset action going. All right, so we'll dig in through these questions. Again, thank you everyone for showing up and asking questions. This has been great. So Samurai Pikachu says, will the interior have some kind of way to be brighter, like lights? Because the cosmetic lights really don't do much. So there are all of those lights that you can buy from the cosmetic vendors, and those are from the ambience vendor. And there are a few different versions of those lights. Some that are meant to be fill lights, some that are meant to be more intense, like kind of localized lights. So I'd say play around with them. Nanera says, are there more or less hooks than Erebor? And I think they're about the same amount of hooks. Around the same number. Maybe a little more in some areas, a little less in other areas. Are ceilings lower in the kin house than the deluxe or standard house? No, the ceilings should be around the same height. There are some ceilings that are flat ceilings, and then there are some ceilings that are kind of more vaulted ceilings. So there's a variety of different ceiling heights within those spaces. So will in-house vendor NPCs be placed on the floor, not buried in the wall or ceiling? This has been a huge problem in regular Hobbit housing. So this is an unfortunate side effect of how those kinds of NPCs are generated. Ones that are like static and you put them on a hook and you're good to go, you should be good to go. Ones that summon the NPCs, those get a little tricky because the system is trying to figure out the best place to place them. And sometimes, based off of the physics that surround it, it feels like the best place to place them is on top of it. And that's not great, but it's not something that we can necessarily ironclad fix. You know, we can make some adjustments to the offset of where those things spawn, but we can't always guarantee that a given placement is going to work with how we force it to spawn, if that makes sense. We have a lot of kinds of houses with many we maintain and enjoy, and all. So this is from Legolas. We have a lot of different kinds of houses we maintain and enjoy, and all of them we find the housing tract a little boring, and would someday like occasional adversaries to show up in interactive stuff, maybe quests in the housing areas. So there's a small number of quests associated with housing, usually an introductory quest, which before I sign out, I'll show you a very special gifts that you get from completing the intro quest here. I think there's certainly an interest and idea internally on what we can do to expand upon events in housing areas. The tricky thing is how to make them present for certain houses without making them obnoxious for the rest of the neighborhood. We don't necessarily want, a person's individual experience, their individual decorations, or if they were going to run an event in their home, to spill outside of their property in some way. And doing that is tricky, and we haven't done the specking for it, and we haven't done the really deep thought on how we can introduce those kinds of things in a way that can stay personal to houses, but also be systemic in a way that allows for us to not have to do an incredible amount of individual work per house. Softsnake GR asks, Update 37 won't have landscape update apart from housing, like a quest pack. Update 37 is a little bit different from normal updates. I think the work that we are doing for it, between the stuff we're doing with housing, the stuff we're doing for classes and stat squish, is substantial, but it is not work that is new landscape, new content kind of work. Things like Lyndelby housing, you're going to be able to purchase it regardless of whatever packs are associated with it. I don't think Update 37 is going to have a kind of quest pack associated with it, a charge associated with it. I think between housing and the River Hobbits, that's, we've got the River Hobbits, we've got Stat Squish, we've got class updates, there's a lot going into this update, but it is not a traditional quest pack update. The new landscape that will be coming, and boy is there a lot of it, will be in Update 38. Just checked housing hooks. Loved all that we can now adjust the height of yard decor. Only in certain hooks. Lotro Housing Dude says, is the kinship home the largest home, or is there one larger? The kinship home is the largest property in the entire neighborhood. It's got the biggest exterior, it's got the biggest interior. Let's see. I think I'm slowly getting there. I'm slowly getting there, catching up. GMBS says, are you able to give us any teasers about River Hobbits? The player race is not something I can tease or show off. It's not my baby to show off. I had originally asked if it would be okay for me to do the casual stroll as a River Hobbit, but it's still being worked on. They're still being worked on it. It's still kind of in development space, even though it is pretty far along at this point. There will be other opportunities for it to be previewed, just not in this stream. Leiriana says, where is the entrance to this zone? So Lyndelby housing appends off of to the south. If you follow the southwest path out of Lyndelby, this will eventually take you to Lyndelby housing. So Ardizel says, so what is the order of size for houses from largest to smallest? So we have Kinship is the largest property. The Stately Deluxe is the next largest in terms of it's got a slightly larger interior than the Deluxe. So you have Stately Deluxe Deluxe. Then you have Stately Base, which has a larger interior than normal base. All of the houses have about the same amount of yard space, except for the Kinship, which has a much larger yard. So Eros216 asks, a general question, are there certain types of landscapes that are particularly challenging, like heavy forested mountains, snowscapes, and wetlands? I think probably, for me anyways, the most challenging space to build are highly vertical but still playable spaces. So like steep slopes, steep cliffs, like those are hard to build because you want to have the terrain be a certain angle for camera usability, but you also want to suggest a steepness to those spaces. So a lot of time, like when you're running up a hill, your camera's basically looking at the hill, so you don't have a lot of like broad visibility. So those are always, for me, the trickiest to build. All right, so we're a little over, so I'm gonna dig through a couple more questions, and yeah, we'll call it a night. So question, can you remove the fencing around the enormous yard hooks in Rohan? I'm not sure what that means. If you mean the... oh, okay, I think I understand now. I think those had kind of been built to show the bounds of the enormous yard spaces. Again, with something that's built, I don't necessarily want to remove it, because even though it may not be something that you specifically like, it may be something that other people like. I learned my lesson a few years ago by deleting a rock in the Rivendell Valley, and boy did people yell at me for ruining their kinship meeting space because I got rid of the rock. So we're not likely to remove things in a very personal space like housing, because we don't want to change the experience that has been happening in that space for people that may have gotten comfortable with it. All right, so the one last thing that I'm going to do, since I see mostly comments here and not a lot of questions, and I'm certainly super happy to see all of these comments, the one last thing that I'm going to do before I sign off is show you the present that the Hobbitlan will give to you for, you know, having come to and settled. They're curious folk, and as curious folk, they are a little nosy and they like to keep tabs on things. So as part of the Lyndelby housing experience, you can talk with the broker, and she will have a quest available to you. It's a one-time quest, and when you complete it, you get Lyndelby visitors. This is a selection box where you can pick from a variety of different visitors. You can have Hobbitlan male and female visitors, a Hobbitlan elder, a property guard, and my personal favorite, something that is near and dear to my heart, a giant sleeping deep claw. Isn't he adorable? He's not quite as big as the ones that I hide everywhere, but he's just snoozing. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for spending the time with me this afternoon and for taking a tour of Lyndelby housing. It has been great. I've been having a lot of fun showing it off. It's been something that we have had in the works for a while now, and we're just waiting for the right time to release, and the time is now with River Hobbits coming out as well. So thank you, everyone, for the time. Thank you for the questions. Bullroar is live now for testing Stat Squish and class updates. We'll probably do another one, another couple more Bullroar tests in the near future. Not the next one, but the one after is when Lyndelby. I'm aiming to have Lyndelby housing opened up for everyone to hop in and test out. So thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, great weekend. Hope you're staying cool if it's warm. Hope you're staying warm if it's cool. And yeah, have a great day.